back to the Birdhouse Dynasty Trade Show, and today Matt English and I are going to break down some trades in our leagues, in particular 2 trades involving ourselves. One I got, it involves the 101, and then Matt's trade involves a middling to above average wide receiver, so we can get into those ranges and talk about the values of that type of receiver. But first of all, how are you doing, Matt? It's freezing here. You got that Green Bay sign behind you for the 2025 draft, but what's the coldest temperature you've had actually down there in Houston for the last 5 years?
Oh, the last 5 years? I don't know. It got into the teens a couple times.
It got into the teens. All right.
We've had snow a couple times in the last 5 years. No, it's like 58 degrees here now. So
I'd love to see that.
Big negative temperatures.
It is a balmy -6 here in the land of the frozen tundra. But we've got some trades here to warm things up, and we're gonna fire it up with a deal involving the 101 pick. We're going right to the top. Here we go. This is in the Birdhouse Bestball, the Birdhouse Dynasty League number 2 best ball format. You start 12, and I was able to unload Saquon Barkley for the 101 and 304. So on the surface, Matt, what are your first thoughts of that before I get into more context? If you just saw this go across.
So I don't know what, from a point value, what Barkley's value is. Okay, exactly. I don't know what the point value is exactly, nor do I know the exact value of the 101 at this minute. But I love the deal getting the 101 here because we are so early in the offseason and rookie drafts or pre-draft process that it gives you so many options as we get closer and closer to the draft, right? That 101 can be turned into multiple picks this year, next year, combination of the both. Could get you more play. It could do so much more for you as we get closer to the draft because that pick is only going to go up in value. I know, let's see, this is an offense-only league, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, you're looking at Genty's probably the projection there. I mean, if he lands in Dallas, like a lot of people think, that's pretty cool. But what if other teams, excuse me, move up to go get a player like him? I don't know, man. It's just you have so many options there, and Genty could increase his value based on where he lands. You know, I mean, I love it. Saquon's going to be an Eagle, and he looked beautiful this year. He looked amazing. He stayed healthy all year. But how old is Saquon again? 28?
He's 28, yes.
20. So we're getting closer to that 30 mark, and we do have an injury history. Is he going to stay healthy next year? Do the Eagles look the same? Kellen Moore's not going to be there, and I think he's the biggest reason they won this year because he adjusted his play calling and his scheme to what they had in place. He wanted to throw the ball more, but they were a run-built team or a built-run team, so that's what he did. So I love the deal. I absolutely love it. You got so many more options, and you come off of a player who might give you sense to worry long-term. So,
yes. Yeah, I was going after the 101 and got it here. Now, to give you some context, I had offered something similar out prior to this offer I sent to the 102 and 103 owners as well, because pretty much straight up, Saquon is worth a little bit more than the 102 and 103s. So I had offered similar deals where I was getting the 102, a third rounder, and a very low end running back. Like one of them, it was like the 102 third rounder and Antonio Gibson. And another one was the 103, a third rounder, and another running back. I'm trying to think who it was. But it was another like fringe starter type, like Antonio Gibson. Nothing special, but something that in a best ball format, you know, Antonio Gibson probably, as mediocre as he was last year, still cracked a best ball lineup for 4 or 5 times. It was craptastic, those 10 or 12 points, but
he cracked the lineup at least 12 times.
it still cracked the lineup, and that's important to note when you're doing deals in best ball formats. If you can sneak in one of those lower end types, either at running back or wide receiver, you get those spike weeks from wide receivers, and we'll see that in your deal. But you know, Antonio Gibson is what he is at this point in his career. A lot of people have the Patriots selecting a running back this year, so we don't even know. I mean, who knows? The Patriots could end up cutting him, and he goes somewhere else. But some people in New England, they like Gibson more than Ramondre. So Ramondre, all he's got is the contract, and that contract can be probably gone at any time. It's probably not a guaranteed I think it was a 3-year deal that Stevenson signed. Yeah. So the backfield there in New England is wide open, put it that way. So that was why I was doing that. But then so back to this one, I had offered for the 102 and 103. And then I was like, well, you know, I might as well go and try for the 101 at least. If I'm throwing Saquon Barkley out there, I mean, the name alone speaks for itself. He's coming right off of the Super Bowl win. He was obviously a major reason that they got there. He didn't have the best of games, but he wasn't terrible. The Chiefs obviously loaded up to try and stop him. And Jalen Hurts made him pay for that. But, you know, Saquon is awesome. I mean, how many 60-yard touchdowns did he have this year? And I just kept looking at all this, and is that replicable? Can he do it again? It's doubtful. Like, look at all the 2,000-yard rushing seasons we've had in the history of the league. Nobody's repeated one, for one.
Yeah.
For two, you mentioned the health thing. He stayed healthy every week. He only sat one game at the very end of the season because they didn't need to win. So there's those factors. I think even in a good season for him next year, you're looking at 1,500 to 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns. So like there's going to be a regression. I actually traded for Saquon for a playoff push in this league. I was first or second place, and the last place team had him. And I was like, well, it was more of a defensive move, if anything, because I was just wanting to not make sure that none of my opponents in the playoffs had Saquon. So I gave up a 26 first and second to get Saquon around week 10 or 11. And obviously he produced for me. I didn't end up winning this league, but he was not the reason that I didn't win. And like I said, I had a good squad. I have 4 or 5 other starting running backs on this team. I don't put it this way. I don't need them to contend next year. And like you were saying, you know, I can either take Genty and get a 5-6 year younger stud running back, or split it up and see what I can get by trading down. Now the context from the other side, the guy who had the 101 was the worst team in the league. And he also was able to acquire, he has 2 other firsts. He still has like the 105 and the 109, I think, and 3 seconds. So it's like, he didn't need all of those picks. So he's just filling a hole by grabbing Saquon. And it does give him an opportunity to contend, like possibly next season right away. In a best ball format, you know, it's a little more open. so to speak, to the middling teams potentially winning it versus a lineup league. And so it's not this, you can throw it in the keep trade cut calculator and yeah, I'll win this on the calculator. But I understand it from the other guy's perspective, and that's why I made the offer. So,
no, that's good. Not knowing that he's got multiple other first, it probably a pretty good deal to get Saquon back, and then also still be able to fire off picks. So,
yeah, I mean, if I was to guess between Saquon and Genty next season, who's going to score more points, I would bet on Saquon scoring more, pretty much regardless of where Genty goes, just because the Eagles line is just so awesome that I don't care who's calling the plays. You know, you mentioned Kellen Moore leaving, but I don't know who they brought in an offensive coordinator. Did they just promote from within? I'm not sure yet.
I'm not 100%, but I know Sirianni made it very clear that this is his staff and it's his team. Stay the hell out. I know he made that very clear. Now, I don't know as far as what's been replaced, what's not, but I don't know if he's taken anybody with him. So,
yeah. Well, the bottom line is, you know, Saquon, this is the time to move him if you want to, because his value is never going to be higher. Like, even if he puts up another 2,000-yard season next year, his value is not going to increase, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's already
older, and
yeah, he's at RB 3 or 4 on keep trade cut. You know, I know he's behind Gibbs and Bijan, and those guys are just going to stay ahead of him. They've got 4 years on him age wise, and age plays a huge factor, especially at the running back position in the values on keep trade cut. You know, I had another deal out there. This is something we could get into after. I wanted to talk about is deals that some of the best deals you make are the deals that actually don't get done. And there was I have a team that's a little bit on the old side. I've gone the last 3 years from first place to second place to third place. And so I'm going backwards. And I saw this is an opportunity to maybe salvage something for McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. I have both of them on the team, and I basically did clustered them up with a few other older guys to try and get the 101 and 201 from somebody, but it got rejected. Now, on the plus side, I still have McCaffrey and Henry going into next season, so that's not so bad either, barring health, of course, with those guys. So,
and McCaffrey's someone you could move on from as well if he's testing well, looks good, and we know he's going to play this year, right? So still someone who could be moved if he looks good much later down the line, not now, but much later.
Yeah. Like I was selling, in that deal, I was selling McCaffrey at a low point.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's only at 4,400, I think, on keep trade cut right now, which is for the kind of production you can get from the guy is a steal. So me packaging Henry and McCaffrey to somebody I thought would be enticing. I just wanted to get younger. But no dice. I got denied. So we'll leave it at that. But all right, let's check out your deal, Matt. Let me bring it up here. Now this one is in one of my favorite leagues that we've got. It's and now it's not letting me scroll down. Okay. I hate sleeper.
It's our 53-man league.
Yeah, you can start talking about it. I'll try and get it up here.
This is a little bit different in that, it is a best ball, but we start 11 offense, a kicker, and 11 defense. So the picks and the players and the values are a little bit more skewed than just a regular best ball offense only league. Each pick has a different value on it. And the higher or the better that pick is, the more intense that value kind of fluctuates, I would say. Because you're throwing in the defensive players, and then in this year's draft in particular, you've got someone like Travis Hunter who can pick up points on both sides of the balls potentially. So there's kind of a lot that goes into it. If you're having trouble, I can kind of start laying it out.
Yeah, go ahead. I found it. I got it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, well, I'll let you just pull it up now at this point.
Yeah, here we go. All right, there we are. There it is. Okay, so this is, again, the 53-man best ball league that we have, where you start 11 offense and 11 defensive players. So that makes for a very interesting 7-round rookie draft that we'll have coming up. And in this format, to make the defensive players very viable, we've got 10 points for a sack and 10 points for an interception. So it's made the sack artists very valuable in this league, as well as the defensive backs when they do get those interceptions. And then tackles are worth a couple points, not just one. Those are solo tackles, etc. So the point being, the stud defensive players are quite valuable in this league. Like Aiden Hutchinson would, even coming off of his injury, would probably go in the first, at least second round in a startup if we did it again. Last year when we did the startup, I think none of us in this league had done a format like this. And so I don't think Hutchinson went till about the third or fourth round, somewhere around there. But I would think he would go much higher if we were to redo it. So the point being is that those first rounders are going to include, in our rookie draft I'm talking about, those first rounders are going to include a lot of defensive players such as Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, who you mentioned. You could argue either of those two along with Travis Ashton Genty as the number 1 overall pick for our rookie draft. So in this deal here, you got the 207 and Marvin Mims and gave away Zay Flowers. Why don't you tell me about your thought process, Matt?
So one, as if you recall, I know we talked about it briefly before we jumped on here, but I was really high on Zay Flowers going into 2024. Still high on him. But there's kind of, I don't know, for this league, it just doesn't feel right. I wanted to make this move and bring in Marvin Mims, right? It is best ball. And Mims' spike weeks are bigger than Zay Flowers' spike weeks. That's very, very simple for me. It's, also in this league, I also own Nico Collins, JSN, and Marvin Harrison. So it's not like I'm moving off of one of my top 3 receivers. But I wanted a big spike week guy that could be more. He's a tad younger, about the same age, but I get the 207 in this deal, which was important to me. I can't even remember how many picks I have in this league, but I know I got a couple of firsts, a few seconds, a couple of I don't know. I got a bunch, but this pick, it's worth more, right? With the defensive players being added in your normal, that's an earlier second, or dare we
late
say
first, early second.
Yeah. So I feel like if you put this on Keep Trade Cut and evaluate it, it stays within the variance of a fair trade. I come in on a little bit of the lower side here, but I feel like for what I'm getting, for what I want and need, I'm actually coming out ahead here once we get to the draft. But it's all square on paper. It's not a bad deal. It's not that I don't think Zay Flowers is good. I just wanted Marvin Mims, and I get the extra second on top. So it's a win-win for me.
Yeah, I think the 207 in this league is way more valuable than in a lineup league, because of the fact that the defensive players are in there. And so you're going to see at the 207, you're going to have the opportunity for one of the first round offensive players from a lineup league. Like I'm talking, you're going to have a chance at like Emeka Egbuka, potentially Luther Burden, And then at running back, you could have any of the guys. We don't know where these top 5 running backs are going to land yet, and that's going to adjust their ADP. But, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, they could fall there. You could get a quarterback potentially like Jackson Dart, and there's loaded at tight end this draft is. And so Colston Loveland would be a possibility. Obviously Fannin or Arroyo probably be there too. And then you could take a defensive player, or as you mentioned, you have a ton of draft picks early in this league. So this 207 is a great piece that can help you move around the board to go after the guy that you really want, right? You can move up or down in the first round with this pick included. A lot of flexibility with it. I really love this kind of deal.
Yeah, and I'm going to harp on this. There's nothing wrong with Zay Flowers. His value's pretty high. It's pretty stable. I think it's actually higher than Jalen Waddle's right now. But it's a down tier move, right? I get someone else who's a little bit further down in that tier, or maybe at the top of the next tier, and I'm getting a much more valuable pick behind it as well. So it's just following the same trend. If I'm high on someone, I get him, and it's great. Played with him. Now I'm going to down tier. I did the same thing in another league with Joe Burrow, and I down tiered to Trevor Lawrence and got an additional first, and then ended up trading Trevor Lawrence right back to the same guy who gave him to me in the same year. So it's no one's safe. No one's safe. Except maybe Jaden Daniels. He might be safe from trade on my rosters. That's about it.
Yeah, so if we go over to keep trade cut here, I brought up Zay Flowers, who you mentioned. There he is at 49-44, wide receiver 22, which is right around where he should be. And so then if we scroll down here, we can see what other wide receivers in his range. You can see his values stayed pretty steady over the last year. He was right in the wide receiver. He peaked at wide receiver 13 down to wide receiver 29 there. And the other wide receivers in that range, you've got Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, DJ Moore, Chris Olave, and Jameson Williams. So of those receivers, Flowers is probably, to me, one of the most stable. He's stable like DJ Moore is stable, but he's younger. And, Jordan Addison and Jameson Williams, you get more of a spike week thing along with Devonta Smith and Xavier Worthy as well. And then Flowers definitely has a better injury history than Chris Olave at this point. But Zay Flowers is more of a floor play than the spike weeks that you like to see in best ball. So again, going back to you getting Marvin Mims, this is a classic tear down move in a best ball format where you're getting the extra asset, and whatever that turns out to be, you may not even make that draft pick. But you could trade that 207 for a good veteran player. And this league is sort of feeling its way out in player values because we've got the high-end defensive players being very valuable. Micah Parsons or Aiden Hutchinson, like we mentioned earlier, those dudes are first, second round picks in this league in a startup. And so they're, the elite pass rushers are the equivalent of basically elite quarterback or elite wide receivers, I'd say, at least. And so this is going to be a very interesting draft. I love this league and the format just because it's completely different than what we're used to. And it keeps you interested on both sides of the ball. Like these sack artists, having them, you're rooting for your guy to get a sack. Like it's pretty fun.
Oh man, I got to tell you, you get deep into a playoff run and you've got defensive guys you get to shuffle around on your roster. to try and sneak out a win or stay in a game. I mean, you really have to work to win in this league consistently. I mean, regular season, people probably won't do as much shenanigans, but come playoff time, it's win or go home. You are glued to the waiver wire and everything happening, because, I mean, you could just pluck. I mean, in another league that we have in IDP, I was plucking defensive players in and out of the lineup. That was all I was doing, because the offensive players always touch you. the defensive players, I could shuffle in so many.
That's the thing I love about the best ball formats, especially with the IDP, is you get into the Sunday night and Monday night games, and you just are looking for any bodies literally that are available just to throw in there, because the way the format is, you get a sack from a edge rusher that can be a D lineman or linebacker. That's 10 points right there, plus the yardage, and then he probably gets a couple other stats in the game. He's in your lineup. Boom. You just are looking for a sack. And the same goes for defensive backs. Like, you just plug guys in there and hope they get an interception.
Mm-hmm.
And the way best ball is set up on Sleeper, you're able to drop guys who've already played. So it's a little odd, but I mean, it's not really the way that I had intended it to be, but there's no way to block that on Sleeper. So that's the format. That's how you got to play it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more diligent, the harder you work, the more successful you're going to be, quite simply. And this is all your best ball leagues out there for anybody who's playing best ball. The bottom of your lineup, this is important. The bottom of your roster, I mean, should be very fluid. Like, the last 5 to 6, 7 guys shouldn't be guys that you're just stashing and hoping become something in 3 years. That's not. You got to think of it more.
That's what the off season's for.
Yeah,
that's what the off
think of it more of a redraft philosophy, and that you have flexibility at the bottom of your bench to get guys to get you points right now. And that's not to say don't roster these young and hopeful guys, but like last year, I had Javon Baker in this league, and I let him go after a month, and he wasn't doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted somebody like MVS, because he had the possibility of scoring every week and getting 20 some points. So that's the fun part about the best ball format. And I'm really looking forward to the draft in this league for sure. Now, if we want to talk about Zay Flowers and what you did with him there's a lot of receivers in that range. Even if you go below Jamison Williams, you can go down to probably the 4,000 range. Your DK Metcalfs, your Brandon Ayuk's, Deebo Samuel to some extent. He's fallen a little bit more, but point being, those point producing veterans and solid floor guys at wide receiver in a lineup league, they're very important. You want to have a lot of those solid wide receiver 2, 3-ish guys, but when you take it from the broader macro perspective, wide receiver 20 down to like wide receiver 50 in best ball is like this huge tier to me. So either you have a couple of those, or you want a few of those, and then maybe 1 or 2 elite guys. And if you can, try to move up from them, which I'm sure you tried with Zay Flowers. But since you weren't able to, then you move down to the bottom of that tier, that wide tier, with Marvin Mims, who's probably ranked, I'm going to guess in the 40s. Okay. But in best ball, they're much closer than in a lineup league, because Marvin Mims isn't somebody that you can just plug and play in a lineup league.
Right. It's not points per week that I'm interested in for best ball. It's not. It's total points. I want total points, and if their total points are close, but this one did it over the course of 5 weeks, and this one did it over the course of 10, I want the 5-week guy, because when he hits, right? I've got some elite guys to help carry me through, but if I have a few of these spike week guys, it's almost like doing Moneyball, right? If I can't have 3 stud receivers, but I can only have 1 or 2, well, then that third one has to be filled by 2 or 3 other guys. So
Yes.
let's average that out, and that's what I get the hit. Oh, that's ultimately all down tiering is doing for me. Or if it's just replacing. Just play Moneyball. Play Moneyball. That's it.
Yep. Follow that Moneyball series that I threw out a few weeks ago. You'll see what Matt's talking about here. It's, in the movie Moneyball, they're just trying to get runs, right?
Right.
Just trying to get runs. In fantasy, we're looking for points. Doesn't matter how you get them, but how many points you have. And you can follow points in a couple of ways to get them. In fantasy at wide receiver, the 2 main things to look at would be targets and air yards. And Marvin Mims is huge in air yards.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to Rashid Shaheed, right? Shaheed per game last year, per game played, what did he play? 6 or 7 games last year. He had to be top 5 in air yards.
Yeah, he was there, especially those first few weeks when the Saints came out firing or looking better than some of the other teams at the moment. But yeah, he was the focal point of the offense last year under Kubiak. So it's curious to see what's going to happen under Kellen Moore. But yeah, great example. Great example. Yeah. The air yards.
Shaheed's a great sneaky buy or throw in. The way that I would go out trying to acquire somebody like Shaheed and Marvin Mims, like you did, is to get him as a throw-in or on the back end of a deal. You don't want to go out and just say, hey, what do you want for Marvin Mims? Because then the owner is going to be like, well, I like Marvin Mims. You got to pay. If you wanted Marvin Mims, you would have had to probably pay the $207 to get him.
Yeah.
But by putting him on the back end of the deal, you were able to get him at sort of a discount. And that's what the idea is.
Yeah, don't give me that much credit. Don't give me that much credit. That team owner knew that I was interested in Mims. I put Flowers out on the block and told everybody in the league, this is a market test. I'm willing to deal, but like, this is just to kind of see where everybody is. And I got a couple of offers on some stuff, and I started working because honestly, like my ideal down tier from Zay Flowers was someone like Khalil Shakir. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Khalil Shakir production is almost identical to Zay Flowers. Yes. But I feel like I could get Shakir, get the same production, and then get some draft picks or bigger draft pick on top of it. But then like Mims, I was just like, man, I really want those spike weeks. And I feel like I've got some other spike week guys that I'll have to see play out. But this is absolutely what I wanted to do. It just comes with a little bit more pizzazz because it's Mims instead of Shakir.
You must have been watching. Was it the Fantasy Stock Exchange guys? They had the here's what you have, and here's what you're really getting. And they showed Zay Flowers and Khalil Shakir.
Oh, really?
Basically the same player. Right. It's just that Flowers has the perceived higher value because he's a first-round draft pick, and that's always going to be in the back of our minds, right? So he's perceived as a more talented player, but the reality is Khalil Shakir is probably going to put up similar numbers, especially on a week-to-week basis.
Yes,
as Flowers, because Shakir is kind of in his role, like if the Bills take a wide receiver in this draft, they're not going to be picking a slot wide receiver. They're going to be picking a deep ball threat. They don't need somebody to I mean, if they pick a slot guy, it's to be Shakir's backup.
Yeah.
They're not picking somebody like Xavier Restrepo in this draft. They're going to be taking a home run hitter in the 3rd or 4th round, maybe earlier, but who knows? It's going to be somebody to run along Keon Coleman on the outside. Shakir is set in his spot with 6, 7, 8 at least targets a week, solid floor, and so that's a great tear down option for you all out there at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I liked it as an option. I didn't see that video, but I liked it as an option because if you look at the targets, the amount of catches, but then also I felt like there's risk with Shakir that I could get somebody off of because he is in the final year of his rookie deal. So there is some, they could do something fun and move on from it. I don't know. It gets kind of nuts, but when someone's not locked in for another couple of years, especially as you're playing Dynasty, there's pause for concern there. So. Or cause for concern. So that was something I kind of factored into my decision, but to maybe go that direction. But Mims was a better catch for me.
Yeah,
he's sexier than Shakir is. Let's just be honest.
For sure, right? He's flashier.
And again, I'm not looking for the week-to-week points per game. I'm looking for the total points and then the spikes. How big are your spikes? And Mims can drop a 40-point spike week. I don't know if Shakir's doing that unless he happens to get into the end zone a couple of times.
Yeah, and I think Marvin Mims, to add to his side, I think he's pretty secure in his spot in Denver. Most of the mocks that I've seen, they're not taking wide receiver, okay? I've seen Colston Loveland mock to them. I've seen running backs galore mock to them, whether it's in the 1st or 2nd or 3rd round. That's definitely a spot that they're going to look to address somehow, some way, because they're not going to be bringing Javonte Williams back. They've got Audric Estime there, and they've got Jaleel McLaughlin, but they need a little more punch. They need a guy, right? Like Sean Payton had Alvin Kamara in New Orleans. Estime could be the Mark Ingram to that, but they tried as best as they could last year to make Jaleel McLaughlin that Alvin Kamara, and he's just not Alvin Kamara. McLaughlin's an NFL player. He's not going to be losing his job by any stretch. He's a solid dude, but they're going to go out and get somebody in this draft, I think. And whether it's in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round, it's beside the point. The point is that they're looking at somebody that they can, count on, that Peyton can count on as his guy at the running back position.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I don't think Mims is in danger of losing any sort of target share. If they do go receiver, I looked at it more as like replacing Cortland Sutton, not Marvin Mims. So
yeah, I agree there. And they still have Troy Franklin, who, he struggled his rookie season, but he's only going into his 2nd season, right? So it's not like he's getting cut. All right.
No.
No. At least I don't think so. Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
And now, I guess in the league, I wanted to, with this one in particular, I wanted to kind of pull up my picks there because that absolutely helped influence this decision to go ahead and tier back, right?
Yeah, let me bring that up for you here.
Okay.
I'll go down here.
It's a lot to scroll through.
It is. It's tough, and they don't. Oh, there we go. It's not as easy to navigate on a keyboard as it is on your phone. It's crazy, but that's how the Sleeper app was built. It's built for
Smash Bros. There it is. Right below Hobdy.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you are. I get this league's low. You're the Smash Brothers in this league. It mixes me up with your logo and the other leagues. Okay, so your draft picks down here, you can see all the dudes we've got, 53-man rosters. Now it shows taxi. You don't actually have a taxi squad. For some reason, it shows taxi on.
I would love to have a taxi squad.
That would be interesting in best ball. But all right, there's your picks, Matt. So you got the 101, which you earned, and the 107. then now you have the 201, 205, and 207 plus the 301. So in the first 25 picks, you own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks out of the first 25 in this draft. So talk us through that.
Yes.
Talk us through that and how you can apply that to best ball. Like, how many of those picks do you think you're actually going to probably end up making? Now you can't predict the future trades that go through, but are you looking to really only make like 3 or 4 of those picks?
Yep. That's right on the nose. 3 to 4 of them is what I would look to actually fire off here. That 101, I may not actually take it. I could deal that come draft day. I mean, for this league right now, I would probably let it go for 3 firsts.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I can understand that. Say you get 1 mid to late first this year and even 2 future firsts, you could do that for. If you're looking to get 3 firsts, I think that would be the way you'd have to do it. Maybe you could get a mid and a late this year and then a future one thrown in. But I think people are going to hold their firsts a little more tight to the vest in this league versus some other ones.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Well, all these extra firsts that I have, I got during our actual startup. So it was trades I made during the startup to get the seconds. I got a couple more seconds during the season, off season, unloading players and stuff. But that was all done during startup. Because I think now, especially as we see how some of these players are being valued on the defensive and offensive side, like you said, people are going to hold on to those. There's going to be a lot harder to pry people away from.
Yeah, this league's economy is much different than the majority of our other leagues. And so it's going to be real cool to see how this plays out over the next couple of months here. I think there'll be, as a lot of our leagues are, you get one deal and then it kind of snowballs into 2 or 3 other deals happening right away in the league. And this deal that you made with Zay Flowers in there is the perfect kind of guy to get that to happen, because he's sort of a middling to good asset. And now people have more of a perspective of what to expect to have to pay for somebody like that. Because again, yes, you got rid of Zay Flowers, but every team could use a Zay Flowers type wide receiver. You in particular, though, again, didn't need it as much because of your firepower up top at wide receiver. So,
right.
I'm looking forward to the market. So those of you out there who have different scoring format leagues, maybe you're in a start 2 tight end league, or you're in a, start 2 quarterback, 6 point per touchdown pass league, which would bump the value of quarterbacks up a little bit, especially in a 12-teamer or 14-teamer. So those types of formats, know your formats out there, folks. Don't get undercut because you didn't know your format in your league. And that's probably the biggest thing that comes out of this deal, is knowing your league's format and how to use the value of these picks in that regard. All right. Anything else about all this draft capital you're just sitting on now, Matt?
Right now I am. If someone comes knocking for picks, I mean, we can talk. We
We might talk about that a little bit, because I'm on the short side of picks. I do have my first.
Yeah.
But I've gotten rid of a couple. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, I like to. In a couple of leagues where I was actually trying to move further up the draft board, I've accumulated quite a few picks in a couple of leagues. But if you're not competing for the championship, then you better be stacking up something else to compete next year or the following years. So, yep.
Yeah, don't fall asleep at the wheel. Don't become dormant just because you're not getting a bunch of wins in your leagues. That's that's the time I actually become more active, really, is when I need to start looking for the next season. That's when I want to get rid of the veterans that are scoring points. Get them to the guys who need the points now, and get yourself down so you can do as Matt did here and land the 101. And now he's got limitless options here with the 101, especially in this format.
Well, I will say too, and I can think of two leagues that we're both in that I manage these teams, and I have tons of draft capital, but I was middle of the pack. So anywhere from like, let's say 6 to maybe 8 rank wise, close to the middle of the season. And I knew I wasn't going to win. I knew it. So instead of trying to fight it just to make the playoffs and all this, no, sell, get as many draft picks as I can, as much young talent or hurt players that have value as I can, and then come into situations like this. So now the offseason starts. Now I might be one of the richest guys in the league as opposed to the guy who just won a championship, right? Because now I have assets that can turn into a lot more. So exactly.
The saying, if you're not first, you're last, couldn't be more true than in Dynasty, where you either want to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in your league, or you want to be one of the bottom 3. You don't want to be stuck in the middle, because then you don't even know. Then it makes it harder going into the next season to try and decide which way to go.
Right.
Because then you're stuck with trying to possibly rebuild and acquire draft picks in the draft season, which you're losing value by doing that. Your best time to acquire the draft picks is, as you did, during the regular season. That's the time to buy the draft picks, not right now. So that's a good lesson in how to make your choice. You got to make a move one way or the other. You don't want to sit in the middle. Dynasty is not the spot to finish 5th place in.
No. Redraft 5th place or 6th place, you can win the league. And then you get to hit the reset button right after. It's okay.
Exactly. Yes. You don't want to finish last in a redraft, especially in a league where they have a last place punishment. I don't know if do you have any leagues, Matt, where you actually have a last place punishment?
Yes, there is one. It's called the Whiskey Dicks League.
Okay, I'm curious. What is it?
This is their shout out. Luckily, I've never finished last in that league. I've won it 3 times, gotten 3rd and 5th in the 5 years it's been going. So,
and what is the last place punishment?
Do what?
What is the punishment for last place?
I forget what this year's punishment is. I know it's going to be probably more vile because it's going to get worse. It hasn't been enforced because I live in Texas now, and when I got into this league, I was in Louisiana, and I don't know if it's actually been enforced, the punishment, or not. So.
So you guys need to make sure with all the social media out there, you guys got to make sure it gets posted up there on X. That's the way to do it.
Maybe I'll talk to somebody about getting that done.
Yeah, we're debating. We're in talks right now in our Crackhead League where we drafted on Super Bowl Sunday. It's a redraft just a simple 10-team redraft that we draft every Super Bowl Sunday. But the trick to it is we don't know where free agents are going to go. We have no idea where the rookies are going to land. And so you have to try and gauge those values. But then on top of it, you have no cheat sheet. So you're literally just drafting off the top of your head.
Nice.
And that leads to some big fallers in the draft sometimes. I mean, Sam Darnold didn't even get drafted.
Yeah.
16 rounds, super flex. Sam Darnold didn't even get picked. But the point being is that we're debating on our last place punishment right now. I think we've got it narrowed down to either doing a stand-up comedy routine or what's the other option? It's either a stand-up routine or I forgot the other option. We did say you had to pay the winner's fee the following year, but I think that went by the wayside. Let me look it up.
In today's economy, that's tough.
Yeah. But we all live close enough to where a stand-up routine is actually, you know, a legitimate option.
I think the loser should mow the winner's yard in a Sunday dress.
Yes. Does it have to say I suck at fantasy football on it?
I mean, you can write it on the dress. That'd be
no, the other option is just a simple toilet seat where it would say I suck at fantasy football on it. And then that would be a yearly thing we would pass around. It would just be a toilet seat that you'd have to wear at the draft each year around your head while we're drafting. Sort of embarrassing. I kind of like the stand-up routine. A little more exciting. A little more involvement. Keeps you definitely the toilet seat. I don't think is something that people would be too adverse to having happen to them, but I don't know many people that actually want to have to go through an actual stand-up comedy routine, because I know that my comedic level is mediocre at best, and I might be a little more funny on here sometimes, but probably not that often. But I don't think the majority of those 10 in our league would really love to have to do a stand-up comedy routine. How about you, Matt? You got any stand-up material ready at your fingertips?
No, I don't. Yeah.
Imagine if we had to do that in
Cat Williams. So
imagine if we had to do that in our bottom line league and make sure that at least like 75% of the people were present for a stand-up comedy routine. How? Yeah. So that's where you would probably have to at least have 50% of the people there and then videotape it live.
Yeah. Live.
Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Do it.
All right.
And actually what's cool is you can still get the 101 but not finish last in your league because of the poop bowl bracket or whatever they call it.
Right.
So
yes. Yeah, we got to decide on that too. I think we would be using the toilet bowl as the thing. Whoever was the ultimate loser, like you lose and you advance on the loser bracket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you lose, you advance. So the ultimate loser would be the one who has to do the routine. It's just a way to make sure in redraft. And in redraft, I think you almost have to have this a punishment for the last place team, because otherwise those bottom 3, 4, 5 teams are just gonna stop paying attention after weeks 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
As much as you want everybody to pay attention and set their lineups, I mean, we're in a day and age where a lot of guys are in multiple leagues, and so obviously you and I do it. Well, if you're not in it at the end, like, it's harder to stay as involved unless it's dynasty. And so this year, your draft picks that you've laid out is a great example of why not to not pay attention halfway through the year if you're not winning.
Yeah, if you're not going to in dynasty, if you know you cannot win the whole thing, you should pull the plug mid-season. Yes. I mean, you should be able to look at your team and know if you got a real shot to compete for the championship, not the playoffs, the championship.
The championship. But you got to be honest with yourself.
Maybe, but there was no amount of deals I was going to be able to pull off to get into the championship game in those leagues. So,
Marvin Mims just scored. I've got the Denver-Cincinnati game on NFL Network here from week 17. 51-yarder. Knicks to Mims.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley with his 70-yard touchdowns and Marvin Mims with his 50-plus yard touchdowns, because he had a few of them. So.
Oh, yeah. He's a blazer.
Yep.
So great pickup here in this league. So that was our trades for today. If you've got any trades out there, feel free to shoot them on over. You can join the Patreon for free right now. If you want the rookie rankings, that'll be a couple bucks a month, but that's it. I'm not charging a whole ton. So check it out, the Birdhouse Dynasty Show at patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. You can always ask any trade questions at Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. I'd be more than happy to help you out with those, or throw them over to Matt. We're willing to do some roster reviews for you as well. So if you've got any questions, especially right now is the time to do it, to evaluate your team. Matt was talking about evaluating your team in the middle of the season, whether to go one way or the other. Well, right now is the time that you can literally flip a loser into a winner. And if you're creative enough and are willing to take risks, this is the time of year where you can really, really gain some value. And, we're before the free agent signings, we're before the combine. So there's a lot of question marks out there. And this is the time where you try and lean into that variance, the unknown, and you take some good calculated risks here at this time of the year. It can really pay off for you come September. Anything else to add, Matt, before we head on out today? Final
Never
thought.
stop working. Never
What's
stop
that?
working. Never stop working.
That's right. Make sure you all out there never stop working.